So now we're gonna jump on to the next part, probably the more exciting part, a lot of intrigue. So I'm not sure if you have your own rankings, but I've done some homework on these quarterbacks, the main six. Um, obviously Trevor Lawrence, Zack Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Kyle Trask. I'm missing. Oh, Mac Jones. I almost just Mac Jones. So those six. Um, do you have your own, or are you here to?
Yep, I have my own rankings.
Okay, so where do you want to go? Do we want to start at one down to five, or go from five down to one? How do you want to start this?
Uh,
We're doing
let's
production
just
on
get
air.
number one out of the way,
Okay.
and then we can start at the bottom.
Okay,
All
that's
right.
fine. That's fine. Cause yeah. So I'm gonna say my number one. Uh, Surprise, surprise, Trevor Lawrence. Um, I mean, just in case you for some reason don't know why, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, great arm. I think and I think Clemson didn't even show that much, but he's got a great arm. Um, I wouldn't say exactly Mahomes or Josh Allen like, but like our Herbert type, like definitely above average type arm strength. Good. Love his accuracy. Obviously, I mentioned before I love his athleticism too. I mean, if you can outrun the Ohio State defense, you're a pretty good athlete. Um, my only worries in terms of just him, because I try to just look at him. He can't get a little sloppy with his mechanics, but I mean, I think that's something that for the most part, he has very good mechanics. It's just every now and then, like last year in the championship game, he had a bad tendency of underthrows and overthrows, and but I didn't see that much this year, and that was mainly due to him, trying to when you're like really trying to get some muscle on your throw, if you throw a ball, you try to kind of lean into it, and you can go
Mhm.
back and see he did that a lot in that game. But I think the fact that he cleaned that up, and I didn't see that much the second year, um, it was very encouraging. But in regards, I won't say my number two yet, but I will say he's not this. I don't think he should be. He's been renowned as a slam dunk the best, but I would say it's close between him and my number two. But go ahead, John. Who's your number one? Sam
Uh,
Ellinger.
no, no. We won't talk about Sam at all in this rankings because he's not in the top five, top six. Anyway, Trevor Lawrence, obviously my number one as well, which is why I figured we just get it out of the way now because everyone could see this coming. To me, when it comes to just comparison, the complete package, obviously, I mean, we have to see what he does at the pro level, but just coming out of college, I think he looks a lot like Andrew Luck did because he does have that athleticism. He can run. I think it's an underrated part of his game. The arm strength, I think, is comparable. I think that Andrew Luck was a lot more of a slam dunk than Trevor Lawrence is because it was just so obvious that Andrew Luck was going to be, a really, really good quarterback. And that's why teams were tanking for him like the Colts, even though, there was injuries there, but it was obvious that, the whole tank for Andrew Luck stuff was going on, lose for luck or whatever it was called. Um, but yeah, I think that comparison wise, Trevor Lawrence out of every quarterback that's really come out of the draft to me is the closest to Andrew Luck that I've seen. Um, so I think he's obviously going to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I am interested to see how he fits in there because I think they have some pretty good young weapons: James Robinson, DJ Chark, some guys whose value can get boosted up a lot with the fact that a guy like Trevor Lawrence is going to be under center as opposed to the different guys that have been over the last few years. Um, but I don't know. I have some concerns about the coaching staff still. So we'll see how it all works out there. Regardless, I mean Trevor's going to be the quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars for a long time coming. So yeah, he's the obvious number one. I think everybody saw that coming. That's who we're going to put.
Yeah, I will say, although I did make the statement about him being close to my number two, I do agree with you. I don't see much room for failure with Trevor Lawrence. Uh, you know, in regards to just the way he plays himself. So, yeah, I would agree. He's definitely I would label a very safe pick. So, all right, I'll let you go. We'll do like snake draft. All right, number two. Who's your number two?
Okay, so we're doing our second ranked quarterback, right?
Yep,
We're not
number
going to the
two.
back end.
Number two.
Okay. For me, I think a lot of people have some debate here, but for me, I just don't think there is much of one, and I think it's Zach Wilson. I think the really only knock that people can give on him tends to be that he played at BYU, which led to lower competition. But as we've seen in the NFL, that just doesn't really matter because we've seen guys who played the best of the best in college and they did nothing. And we've seen guys like Josh Allen and Carson Wentz who, went to these smaller schools, didn't have that competition, and they've played at MVP levels, and we've seen a lot of other quarterbacks do that as well. I mean, Tony Romo, Kurt Warner, these guys were undrafted. Drew Brees didn't play for a big school. There's just plenty of quarterbacks who have not had big time competition and have been perfectly fine. So yeah, I like Zach Wilson a lot. I feel like he just has that special something that a lot of quarterbacks don't have. Obviously, Trevor feels really safe. And I think that he, has a really high ceiling as well. But Zach, it feels like he has that super high ceiling, also just not the same floor that Trevor has. So yeah, I don't really have a specific NFL comparison to him, but it just feels like when BYU needed to make a play, Zach Wilson was the guy who went out and made it. And so I truly think that he should be the second overall pick, whether that's the Jets or if they trade back. I don't know what the Jets situation is and what they want to do. But I think Zach is pretty much a lock in the top five. I would be shocked to see him honestly go past probably three or four. So for me, it's Zach Wilson. I know some people have Justin Fields up there, but we'll get into Fields whenever I unveil him later down the list.
Maybe he's not in your top five, but anyway, yeah.
Maybe.
So number two, I am also going Zach Wilson. By the way, I haven't heard John's list yet, so this is all. So it's not like he's we're top. I imagine we'll have differences down the line, but yeah, Zach Wilson number two, as I mentioned, not that far from Trevor Lawrence. And yeah, the fact that and when I look at them, I try not to like just the fact that people evaluate, like you mentioned, factor in the schools and the people around them. It's just not fair. I mean, like you mentioned, another name I want to add. I mean, everyone knows Patrick Mahomes, Texas Tech. I think they had a losing record his final year, and we see him now. I mean, John Elway, I think was like 2-10 in his final year at college. He was pretty good. So yeah, it's just not fair to the prospect. Like, you supposed, and that's what annoys me a little bit. Sorry, I'll end this quickly, a little rant, but like evaluate the prospect, not the team. It's just not fair. But yeah, in regards to Zach Wilson, I will say things I loved. Natural thrower, like he was born on Earth to throw, to throw. Like it was just natural. He could have gone and probably played baseball if he really committed himself to a natural arm. Like every pass is a spiral, just about. Like you mentioned a little bit, I think he's a little bit better than Lawrence in regards to the backyard kind of not just tucking or running, but also you know buying time to make throws down the field. So yeah, and then yeah, I mean I will say there's a lot more wow plays. Like, I kind of mentioned I think I mentioned with Burrow this season. Like, I would watch Zach Wilson and be like, okay, that's kind of lucky. Okay, but then you realize after you saying that's kind of lucky, I was like, okay, this can't be luck because it's happened. He's done stuff like this over and over and over again. It's not luck. It's him.
Right.
So, yeah, I do like that about Zach Wilson. Very good arm. I mean, I guess the only knock you could say on him, and once again, I'm not going to put this on knock. I just want to see it. You know, can he process the whole? He didn't play many complex defenses. Didn't play in a big BYU doesn't not. They play what the Big 12. And no offense, Big 12's defenses aren't that great, but still, I'm not gonna knock.
I don't. They don't even play in the Big 12. I don't
I
know
know,
if
but they
they're
played
BYU
Texas, right? I think they played Texas a few times,
Well,
right?
they play Texas like out of conference every year,
Okay.
but they're not actually in the Big 12.
But regardless, like they're not playing the big schools like that. But I'm not gonna knock him for that. It's just something that I want to see. I got to see that with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence got to play more. It's just so I would say that it's just incomplete for Zach Wilson. If I got to see it, maybe he would be better. But regardless, number two, and if I was the Jets, like you mentioned, um, I would say he's better than Sam Darnold, especially physically. Basically definitely built different. I don't think he'll be as injury prone as Darnold. I think he has better arm than Darnold. And we'll get into that more later. But just saying, right as of right now, we know what Sam Darnold is, and we really don't know what Zach Wilson is. I would confidently pick Zach Wilson over Sam Darnold personally.
Same. I would as well.
All right.
And that's no knock on Darnold.
Yeah,
just
it's just
so I
that
can get
he's
that
just
out
been
there.
injured, and it's just and that was a worry for me coming in when he came into the league too, is that he wasn't the most built guy. I know, just a picture of Tom Brady, I mean, there's that, but like Darnold was just, yeah, same thing, pudgy, and the Jets don't have a great offensive line, so it was a recipe for disaster, kind of to begin with. But
Right.
any rebuttals in regards to that, or anything I meant? Did you want to add anything else on Mr. Wilson?
Nope. I pretty much agree with that, and I would even say just to further bring up the school argument where they played. I mean, look a lot of the best players in the league today, like Khalil Mack. He went to Buffalo. Aaron Donald. He went to Pittsburgh. Like there's just so many great players in the league today that did not go to these big time schools that everybody thinks of, as the powerhouses of college football. Even like you said, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, the guy didn't know how to read defenses in college. He played in the Big 12, who is historically known for not having good defense. Like they're all offense. Dude was putting up like 60 points a game, and he would lose games, because the other team put up 70. Like that's just how the Big 12 was. But if you just judge based on the player himself, you could see that there is talent there, and so uh, you know, especially since you're judging them against college competition, I just think it's a dumb argument to be made. Like, oh, this guy played in this conference, this guy played for this school. That should never be used to necessarily benefit a player outside of the fact that okay, we've seen him play against more NFL ready competition. So you can use it to sort of give Trevor Lawrence an edge or something like that, but to knock somebody else because of the school they went to, I think is a bit ridiculous because there's a reason that NFL scouts are looking at this guy as a first round pick is because he's shown the talent to be in that conversation.
And I think that whole can they read defenses? It's also we got to forget like there's a lot more 7-on-7 camps, a lot more of this. That's why we're seeing a lot more. I think the talent at quarterback's been greater and a lot more. That's why we're seeing. No, it's no longer what it was 10, 15-ish years ago where you draft a quarterback and he sits behind a veteran for a year. A lot of the time now it's you draft a guy. Okay, he should be ready to play year one. Barring except for maybe Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is the last one, and to be honest, he probably could have played year one if they didn't already have Alex Smith on the contract, and then so. Um, but yeah, very good point in regards to that. So speaking of big schools, number three, and once again, number three and four very close. This is more like personal preference, but I'm going Mac Jones, quarterback, Alabama, number three. Um, So yeah, in regards, so let me kind of similar to Zack Wilson, very natural thrower. Almost every ball's a spiral. I don't really see him lose command of the ball. He seems to know, if he's going to throw it at the target, it's going to hit the target almost every time. Obviously, I very good. Obviously, played at Alabama, good at going through his progressions, things like that. Now, he has good feel for the pocket. He's not the great scrambler like with Wilson and Lawrence. He's not gonna tuck the ball and run 20 yards. But I mean, he can get 5 yards if he needs to. He's not a total tree back there. But his best strength is he is a pocket passer. In regards to his arm, very good arm, right under there with Zack Wilson's. It's an NFL arm. He can make most of the NFL throws. Only knock maybe, like I mentioned, maybe his mobility. So not every team's gonna be able, but still, I think he can be like a Kirk Cousins or blank Matt Ryan. I don't know why I blanked on Matt Ryan. I couldn't think of in regards to those type of quarterbacks, or even my describing ability like a Dak Prescott, because Mac Jones, very kind of a big guy too. He doesn't look physically imposing. He's a big guy, like I said, natural thrower, so he can throw with guys around him and kind of fall at awkward angles. So that's what I liked about Mac Jones. But who is your number three? I imagine it may not be the same.
Yeah, so this is our first disagreement,
Oh man.
and I will say, so my number three is Justin Fields, but the him and Mac Jones that kind of three spot, it's an interesting debate for me because I hate both schools, so I have to try and take all my bias out. I'm also not very high on either school when it comes to producing NFL quarterbacks. Um, my main knock is it's not about the competition on these kind of things, but it's as we've seen, and even Ryan Fitzpatrick brought this up to Tua this season, is when you have just the crazy NFL level talent of receivers and running backs that Ohio State and Alabama produce, those guys just look so good that sometimes it's hard to actually judge the quarterback on the team because and I only say that because of the track record of those two schools when it comes to producing that talent. I mean, Michael Thomas, Ezekiel Elliott, Carlos Hyde, Devontae Smith, he's going to be in the NFL. Jalen Waddle, these guys are high first round picks. Jerry Judy, Julio Jones, just all these like top elite talents. Derrick Henry, just so many studs coming from these schools at those skill positions that the quarterbacks often get a lot of hype, but just sometimes don't live up to it. I mean, Dwayne Haskins is the most recent example of that. That being said, I also don't believe in the stuff about every quarterback from Ohio State and Bama is doomed, in the NFL because of the talent they play with. So I do think both of those guys are two of the better quarterbacks we've seen out of these schools in a long time. And for me, I give Justin Fields the edge because I think that his running ability is really unique in this draft. I think there's maybe only one other quarterback that's a better runner than him, and that'd be Trey Lance. But I think that Fields, he's a really good quarterback. I think that all the things that for me he struggles with, he can learn to overcome. I think he needs to have a better pocket awareness. I think that when he faces the blitz, that's when you start to see a lot of his mistakes and inconsistencies. But when he has time, and he has a clear head, I think that he just is really accurate. He delivers strikes. He has really good arm strength. Um, so yeah, like I said, I think that just the speed of the game, when it comes to the pressure, I think is one thing that he definitely needs to overcome. But I mean, you give him into the right system, the right coach, a good offensive line, a good run game. You put him in the right spot, and I think that he can be a really special quarterback. Um, Obviously, I don't think that any quarterback past those first two to me feels super safe. Even with Wilson, I think obviously, like I said, he has a lower floor than Trevor Lawrence, but I still see Fields going top 10. To me, he feels like the kind of guy that could go at like the Carolina Panthers pick. Obviously, I think they're also really high on Matt Jones, so I'm not sure where they're going to go, but a dynamic playmaker in a backfield along with a guy like Christian McCaffrey, I think could be super deadly. Um, so yeah, I have Fields as my number three. Going into my number four spot, it is Mac Jones. I think they're really close right there. It's just once again the amount of talent that offense had. It makes it hard for me to fully judge him because he looked really good this year. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, the guy was a Heisman finalist for a reason. But having Devontae Smith, having Jalen Waddle, having Najee Harris, the offensive lineman that they had. It's just such a loaded NFL level offense when it comes to talent. It's it's just hard for me to judge Mac Jones because a lot of times this guy was making throws to receivers who were so wide open it was ridiculous. So one thing that I can truly say is that his deep ball is really good because we saw a lot of deep balls out of this Alabama offense. He delivers really accurate throws to players downfield when they're open. So I have no doubt in his ability to do that. But I do want to see also, I think the fact that, he only had one true year starting. I would like to see some more film because as we saw in Fields, in Lawrence, even, if you've been able to watch some of these other quarterbacks that we're going to talk about, they had more than one year on film, so you could see them grow over the years. And I think that gives you an indication of maybe how much they can grow once they get to the NFL. For Mac, it was really only the film when he was a backup to Tua. Um, he did get some good time in there, because Tua got hurt, and also they were often up a lot, so Mac got to go into games. But his one true season, like I said, I just think it's going to be a whole different ball game in the NFL, and so I just have some question marks about his ability to take that talent and translate it to the league because of the much more complex defensive schemes. Because as much as people love to build up the SEC. These days the SEC defenses are not what they used to be. It was a lot more of an offensive league, and when we saw, especially even Bama, they themselves were not the same defensively as they used to be. So a lot of high octane offenses, and he competed with them. But like I said, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, just those guys feel like surefire things in the league. So it just brings up question marks for me about his ability in the NFL without those kind of playmakers and playing against really good defenses.
Let me throw you a question at you first, before I
Sure.
go to my four, because I'm interested to see. Um, who do you, especially since now we know about Tua, or like,
Hmm.
scratch that. In terms of prospect coming to NFL, who's the better prospect to you, Mac Jones or Tua Tagovailoa? Coming from college straight to the pros.
Uh, Gun to my head, if I have to pick one, honestly, I'm taking Mac Jones.
Okay,
Uh,
I
I
I,
I
I agree.
think I think he has a better arm, uh, better arm strength, which I think goes a long way in the NFL because accuracy is something you can improve. It's hard to get a better deep ball. It's hard to be able to throw the ball 60 plus yards like Mahomes and Josh Allen do. I mean, if Josh Allen can you know revitalize his game and go from like 50% accuracy in college to what he is now, I think it shows the NFL level you can fix that. And so I like his arm talent. Um, yeah, I just think with Tua, I don't know. I mean, once again, really loaded offense around him. I wasn't super high on him in the draft. I think if this was last year's draft, I think obviously, I mean, I thought Herbert was the second best quarterback. I don't think I put Mac Jones over Herbert, but I think he's that third quarterback in last year's
Yeah,
draft, which obviously had two studs at the front, being Burrow and Herbert for me at least.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, I would take Mac Jones, um, and it's purely based off the arm talent for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, on arms a lot. It's the main thing on the quarterback. But yeah,
Yeah.
like I mentioned, I agree with you, and and I agree with everything. Arm strength, and also Max, he's just more aggressive, and I think that's just naturally aggressive. He wants to push the ball. Now, Graham, that's and sometimes he's a little bit over aggressive. I think he threw a few more picks than probably two did the year before. But I think we saw this offense. I mean, this offense was basically unstoppable this year. We saw a national championship. I mean, they were scoring points at will. I mean, even if it wasn't. I mean, then they were missing Jalen Waddle, the other first round wide receiver, for a bunch of games, and the train kept on rolling. So yeah, I do like that better about Mac Jones, and just just a bigger guy, like I mentioned with Tua, worried about injuries. Although Mac doesn't run around like Tua, I think he's built to last in the NFL more than Tua. But for my number four, it is Justin Fields. Like you mentioned, I do like his mobility. He does have a good arm. I just every he gets sloppy every now and then. Like you said too, with the pocket presence, he does abandon the pocket at times when I could say, no, you could have stayed in there and sat there for a second or two, and you had the guy open. But um, regardless, that's a very coachable thing. I'm not. I won't knock him too hard for that. But yeah, he just needs to clean up. Every now and then he gets a little wild with his arm. It just becomes all arm and not. He gets away from his mechanics, especially like you mentioned, when under duress or just on the run, and especially in the NFL when like you mentioned with Alabama, how going from one of those big schools in the NFL, those windows where a guy is open is much smaller, and the room for error is much smaller because it's NFL corners. You can't afford to miss that guy by 2 feet, or else that's in the quarterback's hands or incompletion. So that's my only knock on that. And yeah, I mean, because especially we saw kind of with Jalen Hurts, once teams, because NFL teams are smart, once they contain you in the pocket, what can you do from there? So that's my only concern. But I do believe he can be a solid quarterback. I really don't have a comp for him. I mean, I don't want to say like Michael Vick with like a less fast, but I don't know, like Russell Wilson. This, I mean, he could be like a Deshaun Watson because I mean, Deshaun Watson had similar concerns regards to arm strength mechanics, but then he came, and we all saw what happened with him. He balled out. So sometimes it's just the college, the system, the fact that college, especially Ohio State, a lot more run heavy, a lot more option. Maybe in sometimes NFL too. They have more time because I think there's is it a 20-hour rule? That's what they call it, right? In college, you only have like 20 hours off the field.
Yeah.
NFL, it's your job, it's your career. You're gonna spend, he's probably gonna spend days, hours, weeks with a guy that's gonna help him, drill on his mechanics. So I think all that stuff's very fixable. So I will say I think his ceiling's definitely higher than Mac Jones. Once again, it was just a preference thing. Like if like I'm not gonna call you crazy or wrong, but yeah, that's why he's my number four. But like I mentioned, it's very close. Like I got to the point where it's just preference, kind of nitpicking. Um, So yeah, and I agree. I think these top four guys are definitely, in my mind, top 10, top 15, definitely first round quarterbacks. Um, from here on out, for me though, this guy and then the one that obviously we're gonna leave our top five. It's like end of first, probably second for these guys.
Hmm.
Um, I just think draft. So yeah, so I got five. Five. My number five quarterback is Kyle Trask, quarterback of the University of Florida. Um, I mean, yeah, good arm, good pocket presence. Not the greatest athlete. He's like my comp with him is like Andy Dalton.
Hmm.
He's a good quarterback. He's not going to be amazing. He could be great, especially if you give him pieces. But I don't think he's ever going to be, making highlights like Mahomes you know, or these guys. He's not going to win you games by himself. Just making
Right.
wow plays. But he won't lose you games, or he shouldn't lose you games, but he'll keep you in games. He'll win games. He can make all the throws necessary. Like I said, I comped him Andy Dalton, kind of Matt Ryan ish. So yeah, not much to say on that. But who is your number five?
So for me, first off, I agree. My 1 through 4, those are the guys that are top 15 picks to me. Um, After this, I think there's a drop off, and it was between Trask and Trey Lance. And I know before the season, a lot of people had Trey Lance as potentially even their number 2 quarterback, but unfortunately for him, he did not get to play this season. He had one game, and then COVID stuff obviously, got their season canceled. Uh, and I think he's a project. I think he's raw, but for me, I'm giving the edge to Trey Lance because I think that he just has that boomer bust factor. I agree with you on Trask being like an Andy Dalton level quarterback, but to me, that's kind of his ceiling. I do think he has a high floor because I mean we saw he was really good at Florida, but he was also being coached by Dan Mullen, who a lot of people call like a college quarterback whisperer. He coached Dak Prescott at Mississippi State and elevated him into the quarterback that he is. Along with plenty of other quarterbacks throughout his time. He was I think the coach or the quarterbacks coach for Tim Tebow and like Cam Newton when they were at Florida. So he's coached a lot of really good college quarterbacks, and I think that Kyle Trask to me feels more like that good college quarterback that maybe becomes an NFL starter, but is probably going to be a backup. Um, I don't know. We'll see about him. To me, like I said, after those first 4, I think there's teams that are more able to take a risk, and that's why I'm saying I would go with a guy like Trey Lance over Kyle Trask because I think his potential is a lot higher. I think his running ability is the best in the draft class, and so combine that with his size, he has a really strong arm. If you can teach him the how to be more accurate as a thrower, if you can teach him the pocket presence, the awareness, how to read a defense, which is a lot to teach, but if you can do those things, then I think he can be a really good quarterback in the league. And he just has a unique skill set in this draft class that no other quarterback necessarily has when you combine the arm strength with the running ability. Almost like a more raw version of Josh Allen, a little less size, a little more speed. Um, Obviously, I'm not sure if he can turn into Josh Allen because what Josh did is really hard to do in this league. To go from what he was putting up in college to being an NFL MVP candidate, that's pretty crazy. Um, but I do think that Trey Lance to me has that sort of potential, but also he could just be a total bust and just be terrible.
Yeah. So in regards to my concerns with Lance, who's obviously he's my number six of the six I reviewed. Yeah, mechanic wise, like I kind of mentioned with Fields, his arm, especially this is the worst case where it could just, he, especially even in the pocket, it just sometimes you don't know where the ball's going.
Right.
He relies a lot on just the arm, and honestly, just in my opinion, in regards of just both passing and rushing, I wasn't that all too impressed. I know it's hard to do that because he's playing at North Dakota State. They're not playing a bunch of NFL players, but still, just didn't wow me as much in terms of that. In terms of it's just hard to see that. And then in terms of it, just felt like just from the way that they called plays, it's like they didn't trust him, especially that first. I mean,
Hmm.
it was the first. I mainly watched that first game of the year. Who knows? Maybe it was jitters. Maybe they're just trying to get their guys, just you know, for I guess accustomed to actual game time because it was the first regular season game of the year, the one I watched this season. But just not a lot impressed me. Like you mentioned, he is a project in my eyes, and quite a project. Like he's like second round. Like when they picked Jimmy Garoppolo, he had some things to work on. I think he's a second round guy. I will agree, does have a lot of upside, but I think there's still a lot of work to go on mechanically. Just his feet are like kind of everywhere at times, and that's maybe because of his running ability. He relies on his legs every now and then a little bit too much, but I do see what you mean. Very built physically, very much like I think his measurables are kind of similar to like a Dak Prescott, Cam Newton, Josh Allen. He can be that guy, but he's going to be, like we mentioned, kind of like those older quarterbacks 15 years ago, where they're going to need to sit, maybe a year, and and then work with the quarterback coach, fix the mechanics, and then from there, they can be great. But in regards to the mind game transitioning to the pros, I think he has a bit. He did run a pro style offense, so I did like that in regards to him. So once again, like kind of like with my other ones, 5 and 6 was kind of nitpicky for me. I just felt like Trask was the more surefire, better option to last in the pros as opposed to Lance. So once again, kind of like a preference thing. Are you going to go with the safer pick, or are you going to go with the project? So I guess it just depends on what team you are. Like the Saints, maybe the Saints could grab him, round two in case the Taysom Hill slash Jameis Winston project doesn't work. One of those teams with an older quarterback. I mean, who knows? My Packers might freaking draft him. Who knows? But
Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
yeah,
If Tom Brady plays another 2 years, 3 years, I don't know how long he'll play, but that's a good time for Lance to sit, learn behind the goat.
yeah. But honestly, yeah, I think Trask and Lance. You know, I personally, I don't think they're going to be day one picks. If once I'm going to my head, I don't think they're going to be day one picks. I think they're day two picks.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think at most we're going to see four quarterbacks. I think those top four though, definitely first round picks. They may fall out of the top 15. But that's just because not every team needs a quarterback. A lot of good quarterbacks. But yeah, I think those top four first rounders and these other two, second and I would say second, maybe third. Who knows with Lance, but or Trask. But yeah. Anything else you want to add or rebuttal with?
No, I mean I agree with everything you said. I definitely think that it's going to be interesting to see where a lot of these guys go because in some years drafts it felt really obvious like who's taking a quarterback this year. There's still a lot of question marks. I mean, even within that top five, is New York going to keep Darnold? What are they going to do? Is Atlanta going to try and get a guy that can sit behind Matt Ryan? Or are they going to maybe move on from Matt Ryan? There's a lot of questions within that top 10.
Atlanta could be a team that gets Lance. Sorry, like early, they have that early second round pick. Maybe they get that's what they use
Yeah,
to get a quarterback.
yeah, absolutely. Or like Carolina, do they want to go? Do they feel confident enough in any of the quarterbacks that would be available at their spot to get a guy who can sit behind Teddy Bridgewater for maybe a year, or potentially even replace him? Sort of like we saw Tua did, or Herbert did, this season. I don't know. I feel like there's just a lot of teams that are in position to potentially get a quarterback, but it remains to be seen what's going to happen, especially with the Deshaun Watson stuff with the 49ers and Jimmy G. There's just a lot of quarterback things that are going on that remain to be seen
I
how
mean,
teams are going to handle
Dak
it.
needs a
Even
contract.
even Dak,
Cam
Cowboys.
Newton, free agent.
Yeah, what Washington is going to do because they just cut Alex Smith, which sorry Alex, that sucks. Washington did you dirty right there. Although it made sense. But there's a lot of teams that could get a quarterback, but don't like desperately need one. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially as we get closer, because I do think there's going to be some trades that are going to happen in that top five that are going to make things a lot more clear of what quarterbacks are going to be going.
Yeah, I think one more team to add to Pittsburgh. I mean, sounds like they're
Yep.
right now they're fighting with Big Ben on cutting down his contract. So I would imagine, wouldn't be surprised. I don't think they'll do it with their first round pick, especially since I think they're expecting Ben to be back. But their second round pick, a guy like Lance or Trask, especially if Ben gets hurt again, because they have, as we mentioned before, they have really good defense. And maybe with and we know they have great wide receivers, whether they bring back Juju or not. It's just can you get running back, and a quarterback, and maybe a lineman, and then have to do it all through the draft because I think they're pretty strapped for cash because once again they're trying to negotiate with Ben to take less money so that they can re-sign a Bud Dupree and maybe a running back. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. A lot of questions, and I think the biggest domino to fall will be in terms of the draft will be the Jets. Like, what are the Jets? Are you gonna go with Darnold, or are you gonna move on from Darnold? Because I think we saw with DeRozan, with not DeRozan, with Josh Rosen, Cardinals. I think they knew. I guess other teams knew what they were doing, and they were buying low, and then the Cardinals had to sell him for a second. And I think the Jets, I'm interested to see what the Jets will do, and if they do sell him, you know, and if they do get a quarterback and they don't sell him yet, will they try to get rid of him day two, like the Cardinals did? But yeah, another quarter at the back too. Oh, and then yeah, I forgot Haskins went with or Pittsburgh or not, because Haskins went to Pittsburgh. I forgot. So who knows? Who the heck knows what
Yeah,
Pittsburgh's gonna do?
if they're sold on that.
But yeah, I mean, that's good stuff. Anything else you want to add? I think I got it all out. Like I said, this quarterback class is much deeper than last year's. And like those top two guys, like it's tough between those two, and then also Joe Burrow and Herbert. It would be tough to rank them all, especially since we know what Herbert is now and Burrow. Like it's tough to put 1 through 4. Like I might put what Lawrence 1, and then uh, it's like between Zach and like, and then from there it's like who do you put at 2? Because
For
then once it,
me, which it's I mean, it's a little unfair because we've seen Burrow and Herbert in the NFL, but if we were just going off of what I thought of these guys coming out of college, I think Burrow still has to be 2 because it felt like he was such a safe pick.
yeah,
Like you knew he was going to be good. I mean, maybe you don't know like how good he would be, but you knew that he'd be good in the NFL. And I think that we saw that that's what he was. He had a really good rookie season before the injury.
all right. So yeah, I mean we'll see what happens. Obviously, it's unfortunate we don't have a combine because things like that would help me gauge. Oh, like especially Lance's 40 time or his 3 cone, things like that. As broad jump, I would say, okay, is he explosive? As is he as explosive as some of these other guys? So I know that it's not just the competition was less than
Yeah.
that's why he's getting away from that, or that he's just that physically freak, and he just was at North Dakota State, which is really his fault. So yeah, it sucks that we don't really get a combine, and obviously pro day numbers can be fudged, as we've seen before. I forgot which draft prospect. I think it was Dantzler. He ran like a 4.6 at the combine, and then his pro day he ran like a 4.35, and then people
Yeah.
were like, "I don't know how you get 0.25 faster. You didn't look much faster." But anything else you want to add, John, or we ready to call this one?
That's gonna be it for me. I'm looking forward to the draft. It does suck that we don't get to see a lot of the draft process things that typically happen because at least for the off season, the draft is absolutely my favorite thing.
Yeah,
And so I'm looking forward to draft day. But it'll definitely be a weird one because I think even for the teams, they're definitely wishing that they had things like the combine.
yeah. Oh, especially for deals like
Yep.
Houston deal. 'Cause that's the combine's also where they meet to talk and negotiate. I mean, I think that's where the Cleveland and the Giants, they talked a lot when they did the whole Odell, I think Olivier Vernon trade. I think they mentioned that that's when they did a lot of their talking and negotiating. So
Yeah.
we'll see, especially for Deshaun Watson. I bet you he's wishing there was a combine so we can get the heck out of there. We'll have to mind that situation. But yeah, so we're back. This was it. Let us know in the comments, who your top 5 is. Once again, I want to reiterate this fact. This was our opinionative talk. Is our opinion. Opinions are not facts. We're not saying that these guys, and we're probably going to be wrong, because I don't think any analyst has ever been, especially us, but even the big guys, Mel Kiper, also, no one's been perfect. Okay, so we're probably going to be wrong. And once again, like we
Sam
said,
Ellinger is going to be the best QB in the class. We're going to be wrong about that.
who?
Sam Ellinger, he's going
Oh
to be
my
the best
gosh,
quarterback coming out.
we'll see. Kellen Mond, A&M, but that's gonna wrap it for us, as usual. Hope you all enjoyed. Stay safe. We'll be back later this week with NBA, and obviously next week with NFL as free agency begins to wrap up. But that'll wrap it up for us. Anything else you gotta say?
Jerry Jones signed Dak Prescott already.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say to you, Packers. Just do something.